how urban conservation, not conservative, whatever. How urban conservation can transform Houston. It's going to be an amazing talk if you guys want to start heading over. As you do, we wanted to one more time thank some of the sponsors of Earth Day Houston. Our festival sponsor is Green Mountain Energy, as well as the Port of Houston and Vera Solar. We also wanted to let you know, please don't make Earth Day the only day you choose to care. There is the CEC Environmental Summit coming up on August 10th. Please go to our website and find out more about that. That's cechouston.org. Now I'm going to bring up our next speaker. Jaime Gonzalez serves as the inaugural Houston Urban Conservation Programs Manager for the Nature Conservancy in Houston. His work at TNC involves building partnerships to help create a more resilient, biologically diverse, healthy, and better connected city and region using nature-based solutions. Prior to TNC, Jaime served as the Community Conservation Director at Katy Prairie Conservancy, as well as the Vice President and co-founder of the Coastal Prairie Partnership in Houston, Texas. Jaime's work with KPC involved creating and managing strategic community outreach efforts to further its educational and ecological restoration goals. He also created, delivered, and managed a variety of educational programs for diverse audiences through seasonal youth camps, public tours, and volunteer and service learning opportunities. As the Coastal Prairie Partnership, Jaime helps bring together NGOs, government agencies, and private citizens through collaborative education and visioning processes, leading and managing conferences and maintaining the CPP website and social media presence, which he designed and built. Jaime Gonzalez has won numerous awards for his work in environmental conservation and education, including a Catalyst Award from Houston Tomorrow and the Elizabeth Hull Abernathy Award from the Garden Club of America for his leadership in environmental education. Jaime holds a master's in education and curriculum and instruction in science education and a BS in biology, both from the University of Houston. Go Cougs. Jaime also holds a certificate in environmental communications for the Nicholas School of the Environment at Duke University. Guys, it is with great pleasure that we bring up such an amazing speaker. Please give it up for Jaime Gonzalez.
All right, guys, I think you can hear me if I stay close. Can you hear me? All right. Super. Well, thank you very much to CEC and the other folks who helped put together this Earth Day Houston event. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about something called urban conservation here in a second. But I'm going to start off by backing up just a bit. So as you know, we are celebrating Earth Day today, and we're looking at the health and sustainability of the community. But sometimes you got to ask yourself, what is a community? And here's why. We don't have one community. We have many communities here in the greater Houston area. And I want to talk about two communities just real quick, and then talk about how they need to come together for everybody's sake. The first community is made up of one species, human beings. This community is incredibly diverse. Demographers tell us that this is what the rest of America is going to look like in 50 years. It is incredibly resilient, as you guys saw after Hurricane Harvey and the Tax Day flood, the Memorial Day flood. And it's very kind of can-do and energetic. The second community has been here for thousands of years, and that is the wild creatures and the plants, just like these trees right here. If you look at the fossil record, many of these things have been here for 30,000 years. And they're a community that's often overlooked. We don't pay a lot of attention when we say the word community to the biodiversity, but we literally have thousands of species that depend on us for survival. So it's highly diverse. It's also resilient. It can survive under a lot of conditions, but like I said, it's misunderstood. Here's the thing about those two communities. Those aren't two communities. They're actually one community. Now, we kind of act like nature's over here and humans are over here, but that doesn't get us to where we need to be in a lot of ways. And here's why. That whole community is a living community. They're all biological. And they suffer from the same insults in the environment that everything that's alive does. So if there's bad air quality in Houston, it means cardiovascular rates are impacted. It means that asthma rates go up, which impacts kids' abilities to go to school. It means that the medical costs get passed on. The lungs of birds and mammals and other creatures are affected as well. They're biological creatures too. Water quality, the same thing. I don't need to tell anybody about our water quality issues on the San Jacinto River in Galveston Bay and in other places. Accessible housing. So that's not just a human problem, that's a nature problem as well. There are many places in the city where nature is just not allowed to have very many places to be. And here's another fact. They all suffered from the same hurricanes and drought conditions, partially made worse by climate change. So we have one living community that has a lot of great resources and a lot of great attributes, but very similar challenges. So this leads us into what I mean by urban conservation, because there's a little bit of confusion as to what that means. Here's what that means. Urban conservation is not just done in cities, but it's mostly done in and around cities. And it's not just about conserving the trees and the bees and the lizards and the frogs and all that stuff, which I'm passionate about as an ecologist. It's about taking care of that entire living community so that it can all thrive. And so as the Nature Conservancy enters into this space of working in cities, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be looking to partner with a bunch of different groups to put nature back into the city, not just for the benefit of itself, but for the benefit of communities, especially communities that might not have so many resources as some other communities, but for all Houstonians. So what does that look like? This is what it looks like. In Louisville, what they did is they looked at maps. They had 4 maps. They looked at cardiovascular disease rates. They had one map. They looked at asthma rates in a city, and they had that map. They looked at tree cover rates, and they took that map. And then they looked at an economic map. Who has what money and where? They squashed those maps all together, and what they found were these hot spots in the city where poor people were suffering undue burdens of cardiovascular disease and asthma rates. And what they found was they were doing that in places that were devoid of tree canopy. So this is called the Green Heart Project, and it's being worked on by my colleague in Louisville. And so basically that's where they figured out where to plant the trees. We're not just going out willy-nilly and doing this, but they took it a step further. They're working with the University of Louisville Medical School to document changes in disease rates because you planted trees. So as we look to rebuild after Hurricane Harvey, this is what's going to happen. One is we're going to have to break that artificial barrier between the wild things and people. We are a part of nature. We suffer from the same things that they suffer from. But we're also going to have to admit this to ourselves. We can't engineer using gray infrastructure all of our problems away. We have to use green infrastructure, which looks like Buffalo Bayou Park. Green infrastructure soak up some of those floodwaters. Looks like the larger Bayou Greenways initiative. It looks and feels like green space, and it functions like people protection. Okay? So the good news is there's lots of urban ecology going on, or urban conservation going on. And I actually prefer a different title. Not that urban conservation isn't good, but I actually prefer a title that was coined by Dr. Krasny at Cornell. She calls it Civic Ecology. And that basically goes to the heart of it. We can no longer, as conservationists, just be concerned with the biodiversity, the non-human biodiversity of this planet. We have to be very concerned with cities. By this mid-century, 70% of all human beings will be in cities. If we treat cities like sacrifice zones where we don't do environmental work, not only is our work not penetrating to where people are going, but it also does not admit that people are a very important part of nature and we need to be there with them. So the great thing is there's lots of things going on, but what is that going to look like going into the future as we kind of rebuild this city? Well, I don't know yet because we're still trying to figure that out, but it may look something like this. So first of all, it may look like transforming power lines, which are mowed like 40 times a year, into wildlife corridors that also service folks like Bike Houston who want more trails. That's what it might look like, and offer more mobility to people, okay? It might look like moving out of the floodplains a bit and rewilding those places so that we can collect more water, provide more wildlife habitat, and all that stuff. It may look like when we start to build affordable housing for people, that we also include indigenous plants, which they themselves need housing, so that they can feed things that are wild and necessary and vanishing from our region. So I guess what I'm getting at is that we have a need and an ability at this point to combine the very best aspects of ecological conservation with social justice and care for human beings in a city setting. So this is a great example right here. Discovery Green. What's an adaptive reuse? Tearing out a giant, terrible parking lot and putting in this civic space, which does what? It allows people of different political backgrounds, of different economic backgrounds, of different cultural backgrounds to mix, which is super, super important because we still have a lot of self-segregation going on. It provides us with places to exercise. There's tons of wildlife habitat here. So sometimes people say, as a civic ecologist, who are you working for? The animals or the people? And I say, yes. Yes. So I'm going to finish off with a quote from Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. And this pretty much sums it up in my mind. He said, it really boils down to this. All of life is interrelated. We are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied into a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one destiny affects all indirectly. Let's reunite this community of people and wild things, and let's do it for the benefit of both. We need each other at this point. Thank you very much.